strictly non, this training is strictly nonpartisan and 501c3 compliant. We do not support or oppose any political party, appointed member, or candidate. Our focus tonight is on educating and empowering communities to advocate for equitable, robust, and transparent election funding. And as we take time to let folks join tonight's training, we welcome those in attendance to drop in the chat their names, pronouns, what county or city they're from, and any organizational affiliations they have. We'd also love to know what you hope to get out of today's training. As in past years, our 5 organizations are continuing to partner to monitor election budgets and advocate for funding in this critical election year. Our staff and volunteer county Board of Elections monitors are also gathering information about election budgets being considered statewide. So no matter where you live, all 100 counties are currently discussing, debating, and in some cases deciding how your elections will be funded this year and next. Tonight's 75-minute training has a few specific goals to provide you with important information around 5 key areas, and you can see them on the screen there. We're going to talk about election law changes since the 2024 election. This includes major changes to the county boards of elections and the state board of elections, and to rules around provisional ballots and absentee ballots that were passed in Senate Bill 382 at the end of last year. We'll talk about why your election budget matters, and all the different things that county boards of elections do, and the funding that is required to do it. We'll talk about the timeline for the election funding process. We're going to talk about how to read county budgets, and of course, how to advocate for elections funding with your commissioners. There will be public hearings in each county, and an opportunity for you to speak directly to your commissioners. So we want to know what brought you to this training. Please feel free to let us know in the chat why you're here and what you want to get out of it. And as we talk about the elections funding process and how you can advocate, we want to talk about major changes taking place, like I said, to the county and state boards of elections, as well as significant election legislation that passed late last year. And there are a number of new regulations in place for 2025 that will affect election officials. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Adrian.
Hi, y'all. So, as Tyler mentioned, we're going to see a number of big changes to elections starting this year, and a lot of them are coming from Senate Bill 382, which was a massive bill that was rushed through the General Assembly last December, following the 2024 elections. One of those biggest changes is that SB 382 granted the state auditor, a recently elected partisan official, the oversight and appointment power over the state board of elections, as well as the county boards of elections, taking away this power that once belonged to the governor. This change will shift the state board of elections and all 100 county boards from 3-2 Democratic majorities to 3-2 Republican majorities. The State Court of Appeals allowed this change to go into effect last week, and so the new state board has already been appointed. If you're wondering who's on it, the 3 Republican members are Stacey Ford Eggers, who served on the most recent board before these changes, as well as former State Senator Bob Rucho and Francis DeLuca, who's the former president of a conservative think tank called Civitas. On the Democratic side, the 2 members are Siobhan O'Duffy Millen and Jeff Carmen, both of whom were on the prior iteration of the state board. So with this change in how members are appointed, election administration is going to look different as we head into the municipal elections. SB 382 also made a lot of changes to the time frame for counting and curing ballots, which is going to be a challenge for voters and county boards alike. The General Assembly is considering some additional adjustments to these timeframes to make them at least a little more workable. But unless and until that passes, this is what the law is for now. So first, it severely limits the time that county boards have to research and review provisional and mail ballots. It also cuts back on the time for voters to cure issues with those ballots. Before, counties had 9 days to research and contact voters who might need to provide photo ID or a cure certification for their ballot to count. But under SB 382, voters are only going to have 2.5 days after the election to cure issues with their ballots. And counties are going to have to finish researching, evaluating, and counting provisional ballots just 3 days after the election. Those of you who have monitored County Board of Election pre-canvass meetings will know that provisional review requires a ton of staff time and research. And so cutting down on the number of days they have to get that done means county boards need more staff support and more funding in order to be able to process ballots accurately. SB 382 also requires that all mail ballots that are received by Election Day be continuously counted starting at 5 p.m. that day. During the last election, almost 24,000 mail ballots were received on Election Day alone. So this change too is going to require election officials, it's going to require them to work nonstop until they're done counting, which is another thing that will require increased funding, increased support, and could also risk the accuracy of the results if you don't have that funding. Finally, SB 382 also moved the deadline to request a mail-in ballot 1 week earlier than it currently is. Thanks to y'all monitoring the different County Board of Elections meetings, we know that several county boards have been talking about the potential impacts of SB 382 and how that factors into their budgets. For example, the Stanley County Elections Director said in a recent meeting, "I don't know it would have been physically possible for us to research 500 provisionals in 3 days." Then over in Alamance, the director explained, "This will require more office help. We're going to need more data entry people. This gives us 2.5 days to research provisionals when we had 10 in the past." If we could switch slides. And so in an election we just had, there's just no way just staff can do all that research, and we need to train new people. So based on these needs, a lot of counties such as Durham, Rockingham, Brunswick, Chatham, and Dare are all requesting additional part-time or full-time staff to meet the demands of this shortened provisional and absentee ballot review period. So when does it all happen? As I mentioned, the new State Board of Elections has already been appointed. Next step is in June, when the new state board will appoint some county board members, and also the state auditor will appoint each county board's chair. In July, these new members will take their oaths. Meanwhile, the municipal elections starting this September will be the county board's first time implementing these changed counting and deadline timeframes from SB 382. Once September through November rolls around, we're going to be counting on y'all to attend and monitor pre-absentee meetings, pre-canvass meetings, canvass meetings. But before then, we need to make sure that the county boards have enough funding to meet these new and burdensome timeframes, including making sure they have enough in the budget for permanent staff or temporary hires. Looking beyond SB 382, we're also keeping an eye out, as always, for other potential changes. This could include the potential for follow-up on the supposed registration issues that were flagged in Jefferson Griffin's recent election protests, where he was asserting that some registrants had failed to either provide a driver's license number or a social security number when they registered. It's possible with the shift in the state and county boards of elections that we could see them take some sort of action on these voters' registrations, despite there still being no evidence that any of them were ineligible, and despite their votes from the 2024 election being safe and counted. We could also see action at the federal or state level that's trying to require people to provide documentary proof of citizenship in order to register, which is a burdensome requirement that would disenfranchise many eligible voters who simply don't have access to that proof. And as always, General Assembly could make any number of last-minute changes to our election laws leading up to the municipals. These changes have a direct impact on the work of the state board and the county boards in administering election, and they all cost the counties money. I'll turn it over to Jovita, who's going to further explain why election budgets matter, starting with the duties of the county boards.
Thank you so much, Adrian, and good evening, everybody. And so, to talk about the duties of county boards. And so, county boards of elections are in charge of the administration of elections within their county. Every county board is made up of 5 board members, which votes on decisions and supervises board staff. Each board has at least one elections director. Most county boards have additional staff. Typically, the larger the county, the larger the staff. But there are some counties in which the election director is the only full-time staff person. So when you're thinking about the list of duties that county boards of elections have, it is extremely long. And it includes determining early voting and election day sites. It includes updating voter rolls, approving absentee ballot requests, certifying the actual election results, reviewing provisional ballots, equipping and staffing early voting sites, testing voting equipment, publicizing local elections, deciding voter challenges, auditing elections, deciding candidate challenges, and many more things. So that's quite an extensive list. And so you can learn more about the full list of duties from your County Boards of Elections site at ncsbe.gov, and it tells you all about what they're responsible for, the full list. You can kind of understand the load and the duties of your county board. It's also important to recognize that the county boards of elections work is year-round work. I think we have gotten into a bad habit of saying that we have off years, or this is not a real election year because it's not a midterm or it's not a general election. That is not a thing in North Carolina. Every year is an election year for North Carolina. So we have to think with that in mind. And so it's important to recognize that the work is year round and it does not end after we certify the elections. This year, county boards are also performing regular list maintenance to keep our voter rolls up to date. And there's also preparations being made for the elections to come. So they're already hard at work. This year, 91 of North Carolina's 100 counties will have a municipal election. 91 out of 100. So that is a lot of counties for us to cover this year alone. The funding allotted in the budget for the upcoming fiscal year will fund these elections as well as the 2026 midterm primary elections. So I'm going to pass it to Caitlin to talk about why funding is important to provide for early voting in this year's municipal elections and beyond. Caitlin?
Thanks so much, Dr. Lee. As she noted, part of each county board's responsibility is to determine early voting sites and to prepare, print, and send mail ballots. For many counties, this happens at least once a year, but as Jovita noted, there is going to be, there's usually an election each year. And we know in even years, like in 2026, there'll be the primary election and general election. In the chat, let us know if you've previously helped advocate for early voting in what county and how that experience went. This year, although 91 counties will have municipal elections, not all municipalities will provide absentee voting. And when I say absentee voting, I mean both early voting and mail-in voting options. Yes, you heard me right. By law, municipalities are not required to provide early and mail voting options to voters. Municipalities must adopt these voting methods by a resolution. In 2025, there are 129 municipalities across 27 counties that will not offer absentee voting. Many of these municipalities are located in rural counties in western and eastern parts of the state, with populations typically between 1,000 to 2,000 people. Sparta and Allegheny, Garysburg and Northampton, Bladenboro and Bladen are a few examples of municipalities that don't offer absentee voting. Additionally, when a municipality does not have this voting method, voters who are overseas, like military members, can't vote in their municipal elections. It also causes additional barriers for voters with disabilities, voters who are homebound, or people who are unable to vote on election day due to work, childcare, or life. A driving factor for not providing early and mail-in voting is the cost. While counties handle the administrative costs like staff time and meetings, municipalities are billed for certain expenses like absentee ballot packages, printing, envelopes, postage, and the rental costs for early voting sites if they're not located at a public building. In a county with multiple municipal elections, like in Guilford, there is cost sharing to reduce the financial burdens on municipalities. Most importantly, this is a policy choice by our state. It does not have to be this way. Lawmakers in Raleigh could prioritize investing in our democracy by robust and consistent funding to ensure voters have all the same options regardless of their geographical location and alleviate financial pressures on municipalities. For example, North Carolina could create a centralized or pool funding model, allocate a portion of our state sales tax to elections, or provide reimbursements. Now, Tyler is going to inform us about the impacts of underfunding elections and election advocacy funding successes.
Thanks, Caitlin. So, as you can see, the County Board of Elections has a lot of work, and being an elections director is a big job with a lot of responsibility. So, I wanted to uplift some excellent reporting by Carolina Public Press that address critical issues with North Carolina's current process for funding county election boards. We know that there have been over 60 changes in the county election director position since 2019, and that's across all 100 counties. The Carolina Public Press investigation found that this was connected to low pay for election directors. According to them, counties that paid the least or paid the least in relation to their population tended to have election directors in place for the least amount of time. Counties with the highest pay levels, especially in relation to their populations, tended to have the highest tenured directors. The North Carolina General Assembly has set the minimum pay for county election directors at $12 per hour, and this minimum pay rate has not been amended since 1999. They spoke with several elections directors, and this quote you see here is from Robert Webb, the elections director in Caswell County, who said that a lot of long hours, frustration, and at times you do get to a point that it feels like there's no way you can do it all, but someone has to do this work. Patrick Wick, the elections director in Alexander County, said that most people don't understand all the logistics and year-long preparations in order to have accurate and efficient elections. I want to uplift some election funding successes, though. We know that from past research that there is a correlation between election funding and voter turnout. And this graph illustrates this. Each dot represents a North Carolina county. The horizontal x-axis shows voter turnout in 2022 by county, and then the vertical y-axis shows the amount each county spent per voter minus the national average. So out of the 83 counties illustrated here, Onslow County spent the least per voter and had the lowest turnout in 2022. And in a report called Surviving the Margins, which we'll give you later when we talk about resources, it's a report from the Southern Coalition for Social Justice. It was explained that Onslow County had among the highest differences between requested and approved budgets across the 6 fiscal years that they studied. But thanks to elections funding advocacy over the past couple of years, Onslow has seen a substantial increase in funding. So during the last fiscal year, 2024 to 2025, Onslow County Commissioners approved a budget that was over 60% higher. And you'll see that on the next slide, over 60% higher than the previous presidential election year in 2020 to 2021, fiscal year 2020 to 2021. And that shows that advocacy can work. and that by attending public hearings, contacting county commissioners, we can make a real difference. So how could elections funding make a difference in your county? We would love for you to share your thoughts in the chat. And as you're doing that, I'm going to turn it over to Ann to talk about the process and timeline for elections funding.
Hi, folks. I'm Ann Webb. I'm the Policy Director at Common Cause NC. And I'm just thrilled to see you all tonight. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the timeline for the county budgets and the county elections budgets. While many people assume that county elections boards are funded by the state, the fact is that county commissioners fund your elections. And your county's annual budget will include funding for your county's board of elections, including this fall's municipal elections and next spring's primary election. Funding election administration is a year-round prospect and a complex one that requires bringing together multiple funding streams, identifying the equipment and personnel needed to run the election system. So let's chat for a minute about the timeline. Each county must pass an annual budget no later than July 1st. This is because the county and state fiscal years begin on July 1st and end on June 30 of the following year. For example, the upcoming budget will be for the period beginning July 1st, 2025 and ending on June 30th, 2026. This budget will be called fiscal year 2025-2026 and is abbreviated FY. Working backward from that July deadline, each county has its own timeline. But in general, an election board's budget is proposed by your county elections director or possibly the county manager, beginning in the winter or spring before the next budget cycle. The budget then moves through a process starting behind closed doors with the county manager until the public process begins of presenting the elections budget to the Board of Elections, and then integrating the budget into the county budget in whole or in part. So along the way, there are various opportunities for you to engage in the local budget process, from working with your Board of Elections director in the development of the budget proposal to connecting with county commissioners and the county manager to urge prioritization of funding for election needs. As you see in the timeline, right around this time of year is when most counties are holding budget hearings and working on getting the budget approved. So this is when there are public meetings at the county level, at your county commissioners, to discuss all the different parts of the county budget, including the elections budget. As an overview, your county Board of Elections director or county manager, in preparing the budget and presenting that budget to the county commissioners, is working on that over the first 6 months of the year. And that budget needs to be used to pay for all kinds of things, including the use of polling locations, rent, staff, including poll workers, improvements to the CBOE office space, polling place materials, that includes voting booths, machines, ballots, pens, forms, phones, computers, voter education and outreach, advertising to voters, going to events, and so much more. So we've talked about why county budgets matter and the timeline for the funding process. And now we're going to shift to what you can do. So to help us understand how to read a county budget, I'm going to pass it to our brilliant friend from the North Carolina Budget and Tax Center, Logan Harris.
Thank you so much. So I'm here to give you sort of a whirlwind introduction to looking at budget documents and some tools that you can use to get started finding information from public documents. I just want to start off by saying, most county websites have a page dedicated to their budget, but there's a lot of variation between different counties. So bigger urban counties are more likely to provide multiple documents, often with clearer information and kind of more narrative content. Usually the most comprehensive document that you can find is called a budget book, or sometimes just a budget document. And this could look like a nicely designed PDF, with a lot of sort of description and explanation. Some counties, on the other hand, essentially just publish a PDF of a spreadsheet, which can be harder to navigate. If your county does have a comprehensive budget book, you could look for a dedicated summary of funding for the Board of Elections or just for elections. Often the document is going to be divided up into major categories, and elections usually fall under something called general government. And usually you're going to be interested in like what local dollars are actually going towards election funding. Unfortunately, different counties sometimes use different vocabulary to mean essentially the same thing, but you could keep your eye out for things like county funding, general fund expenditures, or county appropriations for the Board of Elections. And those are often a good indication of, that means that it's like the local dollars that are going towards those uses. You can go ahead and move on to the next slide, where I just have some key terms. I'm not gonna read through all of these. Folks have been asking in the chat if they're going to receive the slides. Yes, you will receive the slides, so you do not need to write all of this down or memorize all of it. But I'm just gonna highlight a couple of things that I think are useful to know. One is the idea of the general fund. So this is the main operating fund for the county that almost all of the tax revenue, that you pay through property tax and sales tax, which are big sources of funding for local governments, go into that fund, and then the county commission has a lot of discretion over how to use those dollars. Revenue is money that the county brings in, which can be through taxes, through fees. One thing I think to know about elections funding is that sometimes in a county budget, you'll see municipal reimbursements. And that means that a county is helping, run elections for cities and then getting some reimbursement from them. So that can just be helpful to kind of understand what that means. And then, yeah, I think I'll leave the rest of these. I'll very briefly mention full-time equivalent or FTE. Sorry, I know I said I was going to stop and then I didn't. Full-time equivalent is a standard way of measuring the number of employees in a given department. And so that's an acronym that you'll see a lot in budget documents and can be a really helpful way to understand department capacity. Now you can go ahead to the next slide. I'm going to share a couple of examples from real county budgets, kind of from different ends of the documentation spectrum. I'm starting with Guilford County, which is one of my favorites because they have a very comprehensive budget book. It's about 410 pages long to give you an idea of the size. But they include something called the Reader's Guide to the Budget. They also have a glossary. And I sometimes recommend people, even if they're not from Guilford, take a look at this budget document because I think some of the ways that it explains information can be helpful in any given county. And you can go ahead to the next slide where I'll show what the actual information about election funding looks like. And so this is sometimes where people's eyes start to cross a little bit. But this table, comes from the section of the Guilford budget document, the Guilford budget book that is focused on the Board of Elections. And it's also another nice thing about this budget. It's easy to navigate with the table of contents. And I'm just going to walk through what some of these numbers mean. So the part that's circled in red at the top just shows a comparison for previous years. I actually don't think I said this is for fiscal year 2025. So it's the most recent budget document that's been published. And often, the budget document will include these previous comparisons. And you'll see for fiscal year 2023 that shows actual budget information. So that means what did the department actually receive in revenue and what did they spend? For 2024, it shows the adopted budget and then an amended budget as well. So often if revenue or spending needs change mid-year, a county will amend their budget. In this case, there were no changes made to the Board of Elections budget, so it's not extremely interesting. And then, the 2025 adopted budget, that's the key information for this year. And then finally, they include, in Guilford, they include a comparison, with the previous fiscal year, so you can see how things have changed. And then if we just look a little more closely at that fiscal year 2025 adopted column, I highlighted some key numbers in yellow there. You can see the revenue that the Board of Elections is expecting to bring in. the amount of money that they're expecting to spend. They do break that down by personnel, people, that's like their salaries and benefits, and then other operating costs, which can be, materials, et cetera. Usually that level of details is super important. And then what I think of as sort of the most important line, this county funds line, which is showing the, what the local dollars going to the Board of Elections are. And that's equal to the expenses minus the revenue. And then finally, at the bottom, we see there are 16 full-time equivalent staff people. That has not changed in the past several years. So we'll go ahead to the next slide, which shows a pretty different looking budget document for Nash County. And I think this can be pretty typical of smaller rural counties. The only thing that Nash makes publicly available is their budget ordinance. And so the ordinance is literally the piece of legislation that the county commission votes on and then passes. So it's not formatted nicely or really designed for public use, although it does include like the key, information about funding amounts. But in this case, it's just a big list of the types of revenue that go into the general fund, and then a big list of expenditures for different departments and types of services. And I just included an example of the portion for departments within general government, and highlighted the 2 line items here that show spending on elections. Nash County does something that is kind of common actually, in that they separate out election operations, which would be sort of like ongoing costs. Often a lot of that is staff, and then something called costs, which might be shorter term, like equipment, like that doesn't happen as frequently potentially. For the purposes of understanding total election funding, I recommend adding these together if you're in a county where this is published separately. And so you can see in the black text on here, just the simple calculation of adding together these 2 items of funding, and total funding for Nash shows up at about $648,000 for fiscal year 2025. So to close, you can go ahead to the next slide. I really just want to emphasize that if you're trying to find a document on your county's website, or if you find a document and the information on it is not very clear, I really encourage you to ask your county commissioner or the people who actually work at your Board of Elections. Part of their job is to make sure that information about our shared public money is accessible to their constituents, the people who live in their county. And so hopefully the information that I've shared gives you like a good starting place for digging into some of these documents, but also never be shy about asking the people who serve you to help you break down this information further. Now I'm very pleased to pass it back to Josita to talk more about how to get into that advocacy.
Thanks so much, Logan. Thank you for that great breakdown on how to actually read the budget, understand the budget, because that is going to be such an important tool in your toolbox as you move forward to advocate for better elections funding. And so that's what we're going to jump into right now. And so for you to advocate for better elections funding, you'll need to do a few things. One of the things that we recommend is attend your county Board of Elections meetings. So information for the CBOE meetings are normally found on the CBOE website, or you can call and get that information as well if you're not seeing it for whatever reason. Information for the, or you could also meet with or call your CBOE director or its members and have conversations as well. When you meet or call with the CBOE director or member, ask them about their budget priorities. Ask them about what their needs are. This can help you to learn where your advocacy could be best served. And so if you understand the gaps that they're already naming for that particular county, that can help you to tailor your advocacy to make sure that you're advocating for the proper elections funding that could really help out your county. So this could help support not only the funding, but also the election administration as well, which falls within this election funding conversation. Make sure that you're asking for a copy of the budget that your actual county Board of Elections requested. You can share that with us using our report forms, and we can help answer any questions you might have about it. The next thing that we recommend is that you will need to find when your county commissioners are having their public hearings around the budget. Information on this can be found on your county commissioner's website, and we will also provide a resource list that will list all of the meeting dates for these county commissioner meetings. This is your opportunity to give feedback and advocate for items in the budget that you care about. Tyler and Logan will talk more about resources we will provide that can help you with your talking points. And again, folks, you'll get resources, you get these slides. And so all of this will be coming to you to make sure that you are well equipped following today's training. It's also important to remember that your county commissioners are the ones who approve the final budget. Hearing from advocates like you is crucial to securing strong elections budgets. Lastly, get the budget. After the budget is approved, follow up with your CBOE director and ask for a copy of the final budget for their office. Share that with us so we can keep a record of it. We can track where needs may exist and where gaps were filled. So, by committing to being an election funding advocate, you are increasing funding for your neighborhoods and your community ahead of the local elections this year and ahead of the 2026 midterm primary elections, and becoming a crucial first part of a year-round, every year, effort that includes early voting advocacy, election protection, and canvas monitoring. With our tools and resources, you can show the power of election funding advocacy where you live. And so, Tyler, could you please share with us more ways that we can help?
Sure, thanks, Jovita. So we're going to talk about all different tools and resources that we have to help you with your advocacy. The first is our budget tracker. This is a calendar that shows upcoming budget meetings for county commissioners. And as we continue to learn about upcoming public hearing dates, we will update this, but you'll be able to find your county. And if we don't have the information on your county, you can always visit the county commission website. And it's always good to call your county first to confirm the public hearing dates, as they do change sometimes. And I should note, all these resources we are going to send you in a follow-up email. And along with the recording for this. Second, we have a directory from the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners that includes your county commission's website and contact information for your county commissioners. I will note that this directory was updated in December of 2023, so some of those commissioners may have changed, and you may want to still go to the county commission website to check. But for a lot of the commissioners, you should be able to find their contact information there. And that's another way, say, you might not be able to attend the public hearing, or, you want to attend, but you also want to email your commissioners or contact them by phone in some cases. You can do that as well. The third resource we have is a guide to building relationships with local officials. So this is great just when you're meeting with, when you're contacting your county board of elections director, when you're contacting your county commissioners, and it lists some basic things that you'll want to address when it comes to elections funding. Fourth, on the next slide, you'll see we've got a resource from the Southern Coalition for Social Justice and the Ash Center for Democratic Governance and Innovation at the Harvard Kennedy School. It is a report called Surviving the Margins, Elections, Budgets, and Marginal Funding Decisions in North Carolina. It's a really excellent report that includes years of research into elections funding, and it highlights counties where we've seen significant changes, such as Onslow. It's a great read. I would highly recommend it. Along with a three-part investigative series from Carolina Public Press called The Election Brain Drain. And you heard me reference that earlier when talking about some of the issues around county election director pay. They did a really good series last year. And if you're interested in learning more about more of what election directors had to say, and more about comparing pay between different counties and so forth, then please take a look at that. And we have even more resources for you. So I'm going to turn over to Logan to talk about some resources from the Budget and Tax Center.
Thanks so much. So I wanted to lift up our economic county snapshots. This is a resource that the Budget and Tax Center puts out every year, kind of towards the beginning of the year, with a bunch of information about sort of understanding like the economy and well-being in every county in North Carolina. So this includes information on income, health outcomes, education, and sort of a variety of other like categories that can just be helpful. You know, it doesn't speak specifically to election funding, but I think can be helpful background information to like understand the economic context in your county. And where possible, we also include, you know, breakouts by race and gender for some of those measures so that you can get a sense of you know, what kind of equity looks like in your county. And then one other item that I'll mention that's not on the slide, but that will send in the follow-up is a spreadsheet that we have of links to local budget documents for the past 2 years. So this includes, it hasn't been updated with the most recently passed budgets for fiscal year 2025, but has information for 2024 and 2023 county budgets, as well as some for large cities within the state. And again, the county websites get updated all the time, so not every single one of those links will still work, but it could save you time in terms of trying to get directly to your county's budget page. And so we will be sharing that spreadsheet as well, and hopefully updating it kind of in the next few months so that includes more up-to-date information. And I think I'm passing it back to Tyler.
Yes, thanks, Logan. So we're going to talk about next steps now that you've got all the tools and resources. So you can share reports with us from County Board of Elections meetings and County Commissioner public hearings at the website that you see there on the screen, ccnc.me/cboe report or dimnc.co/BOE report form. And we're going to include all of this in your follow-up email, so don't worry about writing it all down. But whether you're volunteering with Common Cause or Democracy NC, we're all using the same reporting form. We also want to know, or we also want you to share funding concerns with your state lawmakers, because state legislators, remember, have not raised the minimum pay for county election directors since 1999. And you know, they can also put pressure on county commissioners to fund the Board of Elections. So you can contact them at that website, or you can find your state legislators at that website you see there, ncleg.gov/find your legislators. And on the next slide, you'll see that you can sign up as well to be a year-round County Board of Elections monitor with Common Cause at ccnc.me/monitor, or with Democracy North Carolina at dimnc.co/elections advocacy. And as Javita said, you know, this County Board of Elections, they work year round. And so there are important things to monitor year-round, and there are opportunities to advocate from elections funding right now to early voting advocacy later on, and then canvas monitoring later on in the fall after the election. So, and again, we're going to send all of this to you in a follow-up email. So lastly, before we get to questions, I do want to highlight some upcoming events from our partner organizations here. First up, Democracy North Carolina has a Central Piedmont virtual training series coming up on Thursday. It's for the Central Piedmont region that includes Tri-Area, and this training series will cover legislative updates, voting bills, voter education, and municipal elections. So, and even though it is specific to the Central Piedmont region, anyone can attend, and you can visit that website you see there on the screen, and we'll make sure to include that link in the follow-up. Next, we have an event from the Budget and Tax Center. They do quarterly webinars. Making Connections is what it's called. And this month's webinar is focused on state and federal budgets. And so Sally Hodges Copel, the public policy analyst with the Budget and Tax Center, will be joining to discuss the state of federal and state budgets and how they affect our lives. So if you want a deeper dive beyond just the elections funding, then you can attend that webinar on next Wednesday, May 14th at 7 p.m. And lastly, I do want to uplift an upcoming event that we're partnering with NC Black Alliance, Common Cause, the Southern Coalition for Social Justice, and NC Counts for Code Red redistricting. This is going to be an in-depth discussion of redistricting in North Carolina, what it is, why it's important, how our districts have been gerrymandered in the past. We'll talk about the latest court cases and where we stand right now, and what we can do to reform things. We know that that is a long-standing effort in this state. So please join us for that conversation. That's going to be Tuesday, May 20th at 6:30. It's going to be on the campus of North Carolina A&T University at the NC A&T Student Center. And there will be a virtual option to that as well. So if you can't come in person, you can join virtually. So I know we have given you a lot of information, but we want to open it up now to questions that you have. So please feel free um, to raise your hand if you have questions, or also drop them in the chat. Go ahead, Blakely.
Hello, Tyler. Thank you very much. So I have a question. My first question would be for I live in a rural community, and so I'm very active in our board of elections. Um, how do we get more people, you would say, to want to kind of attend those meetings when, in my opinion, it disenfranchises a lot of people when they have the time in meetings in the middle of the day, like at 4 o'clock. People at work. And sometimes we can request and ask for minutes and those type of things, but also those minutes don't necessarily be as transparent and or detailed. So people then really kind of know what's going on and seem like things are hitting before beforehand. And then by the time the Board of Elections decide on whether early voting timeframes and what have you being released, it's too late for people to do anything about it. So what would you suggest that communities do, even with those instances where the minutes aren't necessarily transparent enough or having access to it? What are some of the strategies that we can utilize to make sure that we hold the people that sit on the board of elections that help make those rules more feasible for the voting constituents?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Blakely. I would say that um, we recommend that you contact the Board of Elections and tell them that this is, the times that they're holding their meetings, it does not make it accessible for the public. And you can write a letter to them, and if they get enough, you know, public, if enough people are questioning them about it, then they will likely end up addressing it at a meeting. And if you're able to find someone who's able to go to the meeting as well, they usually have um, a public comment period, although not all boards of elections do offer that. But that can be another time to voice your concerns. But yeah, I definitely would say that um, that's an issue we've seen in multiple counties. Another thing that you can encourage them to do is to stream their meetings if possible. Some counties do live stream their meetings, whether it be on Zoom or on YouTube, and they record them. And so I know counties like Surrey County does this, Pasquotank County, Alamance County, and that way, even if you can't go to the meeting, you can still view a recording later, and you don't have to wait for the minutes, which it can take months for those minutes to actually get approved. Um, so that's another strategy.
Okay. And I have one more question. I'm gonna be done. My last question for you is: I know that when did the necessary law? Because I'm not clear on this, so you have to help educate me here. Maybe a dumb question, but I'm asking. When was the law ever required that there was only 4 members for the Board of Election to be appointed to the Board of Elections? Because I know it's supposed to be 5, but every one time or during a period of time, it was 4 members to the Board of Election. If I'm wrong, just tell me because I don't know. I'm asking.
I believe Anne, you go ahead, Anne. I believe you're going to come.
Well, Adrian, if you remember the exact years, that's the part I don't know. There was a period of time in which we had 4-member boards, but in the last, several cycles, we've had 5-member boards. So our election boards are currently 5 members, and there's nothing in the Senate Bill 382 changes to the boards of elections that would change that. So the boards are supposed to have 5 members. Now, sometimes they have trouble filling vacancies. And so there can be times when the boards are missing a member while those vacancies are being filled. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, but if they intentionally did not put a person on the board that they knew was supposed to be 5 board members, isn't that a situation where county residents can file not only just a state complaint but have a legal lawsuit? I'm just asking the question. I want to know from a legal perspective.
I'd be happy to talk with you more.
Okay, thank you.
On a separate call for sure
Okay,
about all the permutations. Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll just say one thing about Blakely, like what you're raising right now in terms of the lack of access to these meetings, the inability, the various changes from the board composition from 10 years ago to now. These sorts of tactics, like legal tactics, are purposeful, right? They are driven by our General Assembly, who has been in power for the last 15 years. And I think when we're thinking about why we are all here today, like at one point there was 181 of us in this room. We know the power of our local county boards of elections and the ability for people to be able to access the ballot that way. And so the General Assembly also knows that, and that is why they are continued targeted from the General Assembly to try to suppress and repress people to be able to access the ballot. And so that's why we need, especially you all today in this moment, to be attending the county boards of elections, monitoring them, building relationships, learning about the struggles the boards have, learning about the successes that they have, and as you said, Blakely, advocating for why it is important to have minutes and agendas on the county board of elections in a timely manner. And you may learn that they don't have a staff member to actually be able to do that because their budget doesn't allow them to be able to hire someone to do that sort of staffing work. And so I just want to emphasize everything that you're saying and questioning is things that we in this room at Common Cause, Democracy North Carolina, Budget and Tax Center, Black Alliance are all very concerned about too. And so I just want to re-emphasize that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin. And I believe that Jeff Carmen
Thank you.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want to first say all the disclaimers that Tyler said in the beginning. I'm not here in my capacity as a state board member, but I do want to thank you all because we are in some uncharted territory for people of my generation. And it is critical for you to not give up, to not feel unheard. You all possess a power that will help us navigate these waters. I am extremely encouraged hearing the questions, seeing all the information, knowing that you all will be armed with the necessary information to go out in your respective communities and get people mobilized. If anything we have in our advantage is we're underestimated. And if each one of you will touch 10 people within your circle and encourage them to do the same, we can make a difference over the next 2 years. So thank you all. Thank each organization. Thank each individual that signed on. Let's show them that we are here. And I want to thank you again.
Thank you, Board Member Carmen. I see Angela. Go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, oops, there we go. Let me see if I can get this. Yeah. I had just one easy question is when you were showing the budgets, there was a revenue line as well as all the expenses. What is that revenue line? Actually fun because isn't that income to the county? Is that from, federal funds or taxes? I just was curious. Hope that's an easy question.
Yeah, I can answer this. And it's so revenue for a county overall, those funds come, the biggest sources are from property taxes are going to be the biggest source of revenue, like in terms of revenue that goes into the general fund. So there's property taxes, sales taxes, like fees or fines. And then counties do also get some revenue from state and federal funds. So that's thinking about like the general fund as a whole. When you look at a specific department's revenue, like the Board of Elections revenue specifically, which I know is what you were actually asking about,
right?
I wanted to give a disclaimer. Generally, from my understanding, probably most of the revenue that like an actual Board of Elections would bring in is from candidate filing fees. So candidates have a fee to file when they run.
Okay.
There's often a sort of like miscellaneous kind of revenue that I actually don't know what it's from. But
That's fine. You answered it because it was like,
yeah,
whatever, $11,000, and then their budget is like $3 million. And I'm like, okay, that's okay.
Right.
And
yeah, in the case of Guilford, my guess is that the majority of that revenue is coming from candidate filing fees. And then I mentioned this, but I'll just say it again. Sometimes you will see revenue specifically for like reimbursements from municipalities for helping cities run their elections. So that wasn't in the example that I showed you, but that sometimes will show up in a Board of Elections revenue. And that's just like, there are some expenses that they have for helping, using their equipment or their staffing to help cities run elections, and then they get reimbursed by the city.
I think that my concern is because I volunteer and I work for my Board of Elections, is that if there are more challenges like what Jefferson Griffin just did to Allison Riggs' race, and each of these county boards are so squeezed for funding that they basically can't, make sure all the plates are spinning perfectly, it does really open them up and make them vulnerable to these claims of, oh, you did something like this. And then I worry that the general public doesn't realize just how hard the job is of each county board of elections to run these based on, just volunteers like myself and so forth. And I take personal offense when they say things like that, but it really does seem like the transparency is important, both for people to know, what always looks on the outside as if the I's weren't dotted or the T's. There was nothing malicious about it. It's simply there's too much work to be done for the staffing that's, doing it. And I don't know how much with all these new regulations, how much money would actually take care of that so it's possible. So I really appreciate the education you guys are doing and the advocacy. And that's it.
Thank you, Angela. Do we have other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is Kiba in Mecklenburg County. I'm wondering, SB 382, are we aware of any other states that have made changes to this effect recently, or maybe in a prior election, so that we can kind of have somewhat of a, not having to reinvent the wheel on how to best address some of the most difficult challenges?
Well, I can say one that there is not another state in which the state auditor has appointing power over county boards and state boards. So this is a first. I am I'll ask if my colleagues have any insight into the shortening of the time frames. I'm not sure how that compares to other counties. I know that, the 2.5 days that the counties will have to review provisional ballots is, extremely small.
Yeah, and I welcome Adrienne or Caitlin to jump in if you have this information at the top of your head, but generally I would say some states do have fairly short turnaround for ballot counting. And some states have less availability for ballot curing than North Carolina, and others have, timelines that are longer. So there's quite a bit of variation, and North Carolina was in a pretty kind of in the middle, I think, previously, and is now like very much toward the short end. But I welcome anybody else to jump in with specifics.
The one thing I was going to add, Anne, is the thing that the thing that we are also seeing, as to what Anne said, is a trend in this need to have election day results on election day. And so requiring that all ballots, like in SB 382, be counted on election day, or not providing an opportunity for ballots that are postmarked by election day to be then counted after election day. And so we are seeing that trend. And like in North Carolina, for example, although our canvass is still the same day, so 10 days after election day, and that's when the results will be certified, we are seeing, like in SB 382, that shortening of the window to 2.5 days. And so although the ballots will be counted potentially by then, the results still won't be technically certified until 10 days after the election. And I'm going to drop down a report from the Brennan Center from 2024 that goes over a state the country view of different restrictive laws, as well as expansion of laws too.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, Pat, go ahead.
Hey, Tyler. So I'm on Vote Pro Pros, which we cure ballots. We cure ballots all over the country, and we need every single minute of 9 days. So what they're asking us to do is literally impossible. And some of the issues with curing ballots can be as simple as I had a guy that scotch taped his ballot because the glue didn't work, and then he had to do it again, and the glue didn't work, so he scotch taped his ballot. And so thank goodness I was curing it during early voting so he could go re-vote. But these are the things that happen, or a couple switched envelopes. So the curing of ballots is a really big deal. And I just can't imagine doing it in 2.5 days. I just, even with as many people, we have hundreds of people that help us with the voter protection professionals. We're really good at what we do, but we need the time. So that won't get reversed. Is that what you're saying, Tyler or Caitlin? That law cannot get reversed?
Well, the
Well, I mean, the Board of Elections, sorry, the legislature can always change the law and amend it. And they have been asked to do that by the county boards of elections, who have raised like really serious concerns with the administratability of what they've done here.
They're asking them to do something that's physically impossible. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'll just say, Pat, I have talked to multiple election directors who have said that this timeline is just not realistic. One told me that they need 2 weeks, not 2.5 days. So yes, and I saw there was a question in the chat from Jeffrey about provisional voters curing their ballots. So yes, I mean, the Board of Elections needs to reach out to them. It is up to the voters to go to the County Board of Elections and make the necessary corrections. But what we're also talking about is just the review of these provisional ballots, not just the curing, but it takes a long time for the county boards to simply go through all the provisionals that they have. Some won't be able to be cured, but it's important that the county boards have the time to do all the work that they need to do, so that those that can be cured, they can be notified, and that those that should count will count. And I see we have a question from Jane regarding. Go ahead. Yes, Amy,
I can respond to
Yep.
Jane's question. She asked in the chat, where did these timelines come from? Did the legislators who passed this bill get advice from any experts in this area? And I'll just share. I mean, these timelines were included in a really large bill that included a lot of other subjects that was passed during a November 2024 session after the election. And that bill was rushed through. I mean, it was pushed through very quickly, and it's fairly widely understood that these provisions in large part were responding to frustration with how long it took to count ballots after the high turnout presidential election. And so this was part of a kind of reactionary response to put my own spin on it. So I don't know whether experts were consulted, but I can tell you that there wasn't very much time for the bill to receive any sort of public input.
Thanks. And I will just say, I think I think we would all agree that it's important that we take the time to get it right. Even if that takes a little bit more time, I would rather have the time to make sure that all eligible votes are counted rather than us rushing through this process. All right, we've got a minute left. Any last minute questions?
Tyler, there was a question I wanted to just point out that was in the chat. And the person asked, can county boards of elections accept donations? And I just wanted to touch on that because I think that's like really kind and thinking about, you know, our collective power here and what we could do. But the answer to that is no. And so county boards of elections cannot receive donations. There was a law passed, gosh, when was this? 2 years ago? It's all
2023.
over. And that happened. That was in a response to COVID-19, where we got donations from nonpartisan organizations to help support county boards of elections who were still underfunded still underfunded and suffering from various needs of such as like COVID supplies like pens, increasing staff pay because it was hazard pay, dealing with COVID-19, and those sorts of things. And after that, our General Assembly passed this bill restricting any sort of donations from outside entities like nonpartisan groups. And so that's no longer allowed.
Thanks, Caitlin. Go ahead, Leah.
Well, thank you for pronouncing my name correctly too. This has been a wonderful time with us, with everyone, and I am overwhelmed by the amount of information. I know you said you're going to be mailing us some things. Is there also a recording for us to review this session? And I think that's really, I have many more questions, but I'll just close with that.
Yes. So yeah, we will. We've recorded all of this. We're going to send it out to you with all the tools and resources that we discussed. Sorry, I was muted there. I was saying it's 7:16. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. But I want to thank all of you all for joining us tonight for this election funding advocacy training. And like I said, in the coming days, we will send out all the resources and links, including the recording um, and um, yeah. So if you have any questions, feel free to email us, and you can respond as well to our follow-up email. All right. Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.